Hey Waffle Gang, I do hope you're well. My name is Mark and today we're checking out some Entitled People. Sorry if you can hear Poppy sniffling in the background there. If you do love a Reddit story, please consider hitting the like, that subscribe, maybe that notification bell too. And let's dive straight in to today's stories. Much love, guys. Now this first story does have like an update attached to it, and it's from Ruru Labu, who says, "Sell my son your land or I will call the police." Some backstory. My now passed on next door neighbour was a terrible busybody who felt it was a God-given right to tell everyone in our street what they could and couldn't do, from where they parked their cars to what flowers they could grow. She had to know everyone's business and would harass people until she got answers, even going as far as stalking, but that is for other stories. If she didn't get her own way, she would spread the most evil gossip. Her adult children, a son and a daughter, were both greedy and deeply entitled, believing that because the majority of the street were either social housing or rented properties, they were better than everyone else, and if they didn't get what they wanted, then mother would sort it out. I have many stories about this neighbour, far worse than this, but I will start off with this one, as it is the mildest thing she has done, and fits into the EP subreddit better. The son owns two other properties near the end of the street, which he rents out. At the very end of the same street is another house with a plot of land right next to it. The owners of that house and land built a garage that they use for work, rebuilding old cars and bikes. The business is at least 30 years old, handed down from father to son. It's very small, so they can only work on one vehicle at a time, but due to the owner's skills at restoration, they are always in high demand. One day about 10 years ago, the son rocks up in his latest BMW and walks up to the owner, a father and his teenage son. The rest of the conversation is paraphrased, as I was not a witness, but this was told to my family by the owners themselves. S, son, O, owner, father, you know the drill. The son says, "Hey guys, it's your lucky day. I want to buy your land. I'll give you £15,000. Notice he didn't ask if it was for sale or offer to negotiate a fair price, to which the owner responds, no, sorry, this business is not for sale. Thanks for the interest though." The son then replies, "I wasn't asking for your business. You can set up somewhere else. I want this land. It's just the right size to build another house on." Owner says, "Well, sorry, no, this is our livelihood. We can't just move. We would lose business while looking for someplace else, and besides, it used to be my father's garage and is next door to our home, so why would we want to sell it?" Son says, "So you can make money." Insert a random duh face here. Owner says, "But we make money working here, so sorry, but it's not for sale." The son then does what you would expect a grown man of 30, yes, 30 to do. He complained to his mother. His mother takes no time at all to walk back to the garage. Entitled mother says, "Why won't you sell your garage to my son? He wants to build a house here." Owner says, "Because this is our place of business and we don't want to sell." "You shouldn't even be working here. It's dangerous." Owner says, "I can assure you, ma'am, everything is up to code and we have every right to work here. Now please leave us alone." Entitled mother replies, "What are you hiding in there? Is it drugs?" What, no? We're fixing up an old bike." "I knew it. You're working here illegally. Sell your land to my son or I will contact the authorities." The owner laughed and told her to go ahead. She stormed off and they thought it was over. Just nutty ravings of a mad granny, right? An hour later, sure enough, the police arrive. Apparently an anonymous caller rang them to say the owners had been dealing drugs out of their garage. It was obvious who had called them. Of course, all the neighbours had seen the police arrive. Our street is normally quiet and we are all nosy bastards, so when you see a blue light flashing, you step out and watch the show unfold. EM took great glee in telling everyone stood around and watching the chaos how the owners had been selling drugs to children, and how she wasn't the one who called them, but everyone knows what is going on and thank goodness something is finally being done about it. Half the neighbours were shocked at this event, but a few longer term residents were already giving her the side eye, like it was on special offer at Tesco or Walmart. She must have been feeling pretty smug with herself. Only there was a snag, just a little one. Because the tiny garage worked on rare and old cars, which can be expensive, the owners had CCTV. That was something EM had not counted on. After the police had shown up, the owners knew who the culprit was and had no issue with showing footage, complete with sound to the officers, showing EM threatening to call the police if they didn't sell the land. With half the neighbours out and watching events unfold, the EM's face switched from smugness to fear as police walked away from the garage and approached her instead. The officer then asked if they could step inside her home to discuss something she probably didn't want her neighbours to hear. She received a warning regarding harassment and wasting police time. The owners of the garage were never bothered again, and the last remaining neighbours who didn't know how bad she was finally saw her for the witch she was. Sorry the ending wasn't epic, but that's just how it was, ho hum. Updates. Oh wow. Yep, socially awkward online as in real life. Sorry, I am rubbish. Thanks for all the upvotes and the silver. I really didn't expect this to be so popular, especially as I posted at 3 AM-ish, while on a load of painkillers. I will try to post more about Crazy Pants, as we called her in the future, although they are not so much EP stories as batshit crazy bitch ones. And then they did post an update, but it got removed for some reason, and then there was a further update about a parking spot, which we're going to cover in a moment. But Inevitable Librarian says, I know this is mean, but I would just walk over to her house, walk around it, poking things here and there, with a happy to sad look on her face. And when she comes out asking why I'm there, nicely go, I'll give you $150 for this place. I need it for an open field next to my house. Sell it to me now. Sell it to me now or I'm calling the cops. Ninja Fish says, bippity boppity, your land is my property. Super Happy Cake says, they should have arrested her for false reports. And I think with this being the UK, they wouldn't have done too much, I got to say. Frederick Andre says, ending was still good. Son did not get the land, but EM got landed by the police. And one more from Ironmonger123 who says, in real life while I'm reading this, I took off the sunglasses I was wearing while I was keeping an eye on my sister in the park and just sighed. She asked if I was okay, and I told her if she ever saw me acting like that to punch me as hard as she could. No clue if she'd do it, but I hope someone does if I even show a hint of entitlement. I mean seriously, what the actual fuck? Take my upvotes. Now we're going to cover OP's next little installment of this story. So our next installment is called Harassed Over a Parking Spot. So, some of you have been asking for more stories about my crazy neighbour and her adult kids. I posted this last week, but for some reason, Reddit was playing up and it got lost. A reminder, my next door neighbour, who my friends and I called Crazy Pants, was a very nosy, very entitled woman who tried hard to tell everyone who lived in the same street what they could and couldn't do. Her adult children were equally spoiled. My neighbour on the other side of me, we will call Gina. Gina is a mother of 3 who works in the local supermarket. She's the sort of person who, if you tripped her up, she would apologise to your foot. One day, her husband John got a new job which came with a company car. Nothing special, it was covered in logos for the company, but it meant that Gina could use the family car whenever she needed to. Some of the houses where I live have driveways and some don't. Gina has a drive, but it only takes 1 car. As they were liable for the company car, that took up the space in the drive, and her car would be parked either in front of my house or Crazy Pants, as neither of us had drives. It's a public road, so anyone can park anywhere as long as they don't block a drive. One day, entitled daughter bangs on Gina's door. Apparently, she was annoyed that Gina had been parking in front of her mother's house. That space, as she saw it, was for her when she visited, and because Gina was in the space, Edie had to park in front of my house and walk the whole 5 feet to her mum's house. Oh, the humanity. This was when Gina made the following mistake. Gina said, I'm so sorry, but isn't OP's house right next door? I'm sure you don't have to walk far. The entitled daughter says, how dare you? This is my parking spot. Why do you have 2 cars anyway? You are just a stupid checkout girl. It was at this point John overheard and demanded that Edie leave. So Edie does what a grown woman of 40 always does. She whines to her mother. Wah, mummy. That was when CP went into overdrive. Over 6 months, whenever Gina and her family stepped out into their garden, CP would come out and shout at the children for being too loud, or at Gina for wearing slutty clothes. Gina wears bikinis in the summer, which being in the UK lasts about 31 minutes. She would also turn up to the supermarket Gina worked at and hovered around giving her death stares. Social services, think CPS, but they cover more than children, were called and told that Gina and John had been putting out cigarettes on the children. The RSPCA were called and told that Gina has been starving her cat. She didn't even have a pet at the time. Also, every time her car parked in front of CP's house, CP would bang on her door, screaming about her parking space. Poor Gina tried everything. She recorded the abuse and called the police and the council, but they were only willing to give a warning. Her work could not remove CP as long as she wasn't doing anything, and she could not prove who called social services and the RSPCA. In an effort to help, as we were between the two neighbours, my dad, yep, I live with my dad because I am his carer, decided to let our hedge grow to block CP's view of Gina's garden so she could have peace. It worked for a while. Then one day we get a knock on the door. Our house is council owned, so all necessary maintenance work is carried out by them. A man from the council was stood there and let us know the new fence would be put up by 4 PM. Next thing we heard was the sound of a hedge trimmer. My dad stormed out and demanded to know what was happening. Apparently, we had called the council regarding the very slightly wind-damaged fence between our garden, and CPs agreed to have it replaced. We didn't call anyone. In order to put the new fence in, the hedge we had needed to be removed. There was nothing we could do. We made it clear no one had called anyone because the fence was damaged. They decided to continue and there was nothing we could do. Lo and behold, the next day CP was leaning over the fence and was back to shouting at the children. I would love to say CP got what she deserved, but Gina eventually cracked and sold her car. She then paid £600 for a new fence. After she got rid of the car, the harassment stopped as quickly as it started. Gina is fine now. She now has a management position and a new dog who likes to play with mine. Next time, the one where CP demands to know what I'm doing at 2 AM in my own home. And this story is very on par with the shows that I watch, like Nightmare Neighbor Next Door, all that sort of stuff. Where the neighbors, and if you've seen the shows, you'll totally understand what I'm talking about. They are relentless in what they do. They have no limits. And their whole life revolves around making the other person's life hell. I've seen stories on there about people like cutting the fence post slightly so eventually they rot away and the whole fence falls down, costing the person a lot of money, chucking random seeds over in the garden so, you know, the garden looks like shit after a while. One trying to plant, is it Japanese knotweed or something that's notoriously hard to get rid of once it's in. Paint on cars, acid on cars, puncturing tires, it just goes on and on. The whole show is wild. I mean, I love to watch the drama, but... And in some ways, it sounds like OP used to live on an estate like I used to, where, you know, the police come, everyone's out watching. But let me know your thoughts on this story, and we shall move on to another one. And our next one's from Frinsk2001, who says, EM brings her 4 kids to an adult-only wedding. I attended an adult-only wedding for a co-worker a few days ago. The actual ceremony was in a very small church, so it was mostly family and close friends, but the reception was for roughly 250 people. The reception was at a very elegant hotel ballroom, not child-friendly in any way, crystal stemware, expensive linens on the table, etc. About half an hour into the reception, a commotion started that made everyone stare. EM is arguing with the wedding planner loudly. Me being the nosy broad that I am, inch closer to hear. Turns out, EM brought her 4 young children to the reception even though the invitations clearly stated adults only. The EM insisted that her kids, I'm guessing at ages but the oldest looked 8ish and the youngest one was under a year old, were super well behaved so it was fine. Now keep in mind this was around 7:30 PM. WP was having none of it. She insisted that children were not allowed and she had to leave. In a last-ditch effort to get admitted, EM shouted at the bride. The bride went over and listened to her for a moment and then said in a syrupy sweet voice, "Of course you can come in, EM, but your children cannot." She turned on a heel and went back to her new husband. EM flipped a nut, yelling how she was invited, couldn't find a babysitter, etc. 3 of the groomsmen escorted her and the kids to the door. Bloody entitled people thinking, you know, even though the invite said no children, that they can bring them anyway. And I do feel sorry for the children in this, being dragged along, being involved in this drama. But Yoshi Fank says, bride gives no fucks about EM and I love it. Deleted user says, when my brother and I were younger, maybe 12 and 10 respectively, my cousin had no kids' wedding. When my parents showed up without us, all of that side of the family had children running about and the bride and groom expressed their sorry that we, Big Bro and I, had not come. My parents had listened to their instructions and kept us home out of respect. I'll never understand that logic, but whatever. Weasel189 says, we also had a no children wedding. My husband's family decided that they were going to do whatever they wanted. They brought the whole pack of about 7 kids to try and get them out of the way. We put them in one of the rooms for overnight guests. They trashed the room while the nanny slept, and their parents later brought them into the reception anyway, where they proceeded to steal guest cake and break several items. We were never repaid the cleanup bill and never offered an apology. They wonder why we refused to hang out with them. One of the parents also spiked my drink with alcohol at a separate event because it would be funny. I am allergic to alcohol. Holy moly. And one more from a deleted user who says, man, I love these stories where they give zero fucks and just escort them out while they scream and bitch. Now, what do you guys make of this one? Have you ever been in a similar situation where you've been to like a wedding or an event that's no children, but someone brings the children anyway? What happened? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and we'll move on to another story. And our next story comes from Deranged Behemoth, who says, EM calls the police on me for stealing her daughter, who is my girlfriend, and an adult. What a title. Sorry this is so long, but hope those of you who read it will enjoy it. Background. This happened about 5 years ago. My fiance and I have been together 7 years this month. We're hoping to get married this year, but might postpone due to the circumstances. We were reminiscing some old stories yesterday when this one came up, and she suggested I share it. She was my girlfriend at the time, and at the time I was fully aware that her mum was a few fries short of a Happy Meal. But this was the pinnacle of her behaviour. If you guys enjoy this story, I actually have a few more I will share if you like. Cast: EM entitled Mum, my future mother-in-law. Girlfriend Ellie. PO police officer. OP obviously. Story: Ellie and I weren't living together at the time. She stayed over from time to time when she could. I took her home after she had been staying with me a couple of days and was heading to work. But shortly after, just before getting to work, I get a phone call from her and I can tell she is in tears. Apparently, when she got inside, EM immediately blew up on her about being gone for so long. Even though it was only 2 days, and she told EM she was going to be gone and kept in contact with her while she was gone. But Ellie just sort of brushed it off and went to her room. EM's house was pretty much your stereotypical crazy cat lady house. House badly decaying, cats all over the place, going to the bathroom in random places and whatnot, and when Ellie goes to her room, she realizes while she was gone, the cats pissed and shit all over the pile of her clean clothes. But whatever. Ellie just decided to bag them up and she would wash them the next time she came to my place. Her mum didn't have a functioning washer at the time, and apparently that really set EM off. EM apparently thought Ellie was bagging her clothes because she was planning to go back to my place that night and stay another few days. So she stomped into her room, grabbed the bag, ripped it open and flung the clothes all over the room, along with her cat shit and piss, while screaming at Ellie that she was not going anywhere. That's when Ellie ran outside and called me. She was so upset and didn't know what to do. Her mum had been doing crazy stuff to Ellie since I'd been with her, but up until I just helped her however I could while not getting involved and not saying a word to her mum. I told her to go ahead and get the things she needs and I'll take her to my place. She said she would love that. I told my work I was going to be late due to an emergency and turned around to go and pick her up. When I pulled back up to the house, Ellie was in the driveway crying. I went and hugged her, told her it was going to be okay and that she could stay with me as long as she wanted. So she went back inside to get her things. As I was standing outside waiting, I heard the door open again and went to help Ellie with her things. Uh-oh, it's her mum. EM comes storming out with her hair crazy and frizzled and an old nightgown. She beelines for me and gets right in my face. EM with an extremely thick high-pitched southern accent. My daughter said I need to come out here and ask what you think of me. I knew that it was a blatant lie as Ellie would never instigate this. You got something to say, huh? You think I'm trash, don't you, huh? That's what you think, isn't it? Again, up until now, I'd completely kept my mouth shut and was trying to maintain that, but this woman was up in my face, freaking out and was tormenting the woman I love, so I finally looked at her and broke my silence. I said, why'd you treat her like this? She gasps and says, what do you mean? That's my daughter and I worship the ground she works on. I said, oh really? So calling her a slut, bitch, bad YouTube word, and a whore is worship. Yes, I've heard her say this with my own ears. She gasps again. I would never say anything like that. I'm getting rather irate and I say, bullshit, I've heard you say it. She explodes, you get your fucking ass off my property. Okay, I almost never find myself in situations like this, so I'm not used to it. I say that because after she said this, I pretty much saw red. I'm not proud of it, but I started shouting every curse word in the book I could possibly think of at the top of my lungs while she went back in the house. But thankfully, that only lasted a few seconds and I immediately calmed down. So finally, Ellie comes back out with her stuff. We put it in her car and I assume it's over. But Ellie turns to me and says, "I'm sorry, but we can't leave yet." And I say, "Why not?" She sighs and says, "Mum called the cops." I sort of had a feeling that would happen. No big deal, so we just sat and waited for the cop to arrive. After about 10 minutes or so, a cop car pulls up. Right when he does, EM comes out the house and, oh my god, yes, she was doing exactly what you think. She instantly puts on the fragile, brittle old lady act, hunched over, walking slowly, the whole gig. And of course, when police officer asks her what happened, she has to pitch her entire medical chart to the guy. Ellie will tell you this woman has been terminally ill for 12 years, lol. So when she finally gets done trying to milk this poor guy for sympathy, she tells her version of what happened. She says, "Sir, he came onto my property and verbally attacked me. He's awful to me, sir, and I've never done anything to him. He's turned my daughter against me and is trying to convince her to leave." At first, he seemed somewhat sympathetic to her, until he turns to Ellie. He says, "Mom, this is your boyfriend." To Ellie says, "Yes, sir." "Okay, how old are you?" "Sir, I'm 23. Now, this was my favourite part because the officer looked up from his notepad with a look of, wait, what? Obviously, he was thinking Ellie was a minor or something based off how EM was acting, but quickly realised just what he was dealing with. Eventually he turns to me. The police officer says, "Okay sir, please give me your version of what happened." And I did so. Funny side note, at one point, police officer looks up to me and says, "You look really familiar. Do I know you?" It actually turned out the police officer and I had gone to high school together. Once we recognised each other, we laughed and shook hands very briefly. This was hilarious because out the corner of my eye, I could see EM has a big scowl on her face as she sees me getting friendly with police officer. But anyway, police officer puts his notepad away and turns to me. Just for your information, he says the following with this heavy tone of, "I know that you are fully aware of this and I don't believe you're in the wrong at all, but I have to say this as a formality." The police officer says, "Well, OP, she doesn't want you on the property, so be aware that if you come back here, you technically can be charged with trespassing. Do you understand this as I explained it?" To which I say, "Absolutely, sir." EM says, "But sir, I want to press charges." Police officer says, "He didn't do anything illegal, ma'am." "But he verbally assaulted me." I understand that, and while that was ill-advised, he slightly turns to me and gives me a small gesture with his hand, and I nod in agreement. It's not something I could arrest him for. He agrees he will not come back on your property without your direct permission. Ugh. Okay, fine, whatever. Ellie, come back inside. Ellie says, "What? No." EM says, "You heard the police officer. OP is leaving and you're staying here." Police officer says, "Whoa, ma'am, I didn't say that at all." But, police officer goes on to say, "Your daughter is not a child, ma'am. She is a full-grown adult. She has every right to go wherever she wants." EM says, "I'm her mother and she lives under my roof. I told her she needs to stay here, so she needs to stay." Police officer says, "No, ma'am, that's not how it works. If she wants to go stay with her boyfriend, there is absolutely nothing you can do to stop her." EM starts to fake crocodile tears and stomps in the house in defeat. Ellie and I thanked the officer, got in the car and left. We've been living together ever since. And there's a happy ending. Believe it or not, EM isn't really much of an EM anymore. Over the years since that day, EM has actually decided to make an effort to try and improve herself. I guess she realised that if she didn't make changes, she would lose her relationship with Ellie. So EM started taking advantage of her medical coverage and went to see a psychiatrist and got medicine for mental illness she actually had, as opposed to the one she would make up. Since then, well, she has actually gotten way better. She takes her medicine regularly and has a boyfriend that is an extremely kind man and treats Ellie as though she were his own daughter. So basically, EM isn't really an EM anymore. We actually get along very well and see them frequently, and we help each other out whenever we can. We actually look back on the early years when she was in fact an EM and laugh. So not only is everybody getting along well, we can actually share the cringe stories and happily laugh about them. If you guys would like to hear some more, let me know. Edit, oh my god, Thank you all you guys so much for your upvotes, awards, kind wishes and positive support. I'm so glad you enjoyed this so much. I'm absolutely blown away by your responses, and so is Ellie. We greatly appreciate it all. A lot of you have said you would like to hear more, so either tonight or tomorrow I'll post another story that we will call The Jellyfish Story, and I'll put Ellie's Mum Part 2 in the title. Thank you guys again from the both of us. And I got to say, I think that's the first time I've ever seen a happy update in Entitled People or Entitled Parents or whatever. They're usually just too crazy, everyone breaks up, no contact anymore, and that's it. But for it to turn around like that, I think that's pretty wholesome, isn't it? Anyway, what do you guys make of this one? Are you enjoying an Entitled People story? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. As always, I would love to hear it if you have a moment of your time. Like if you can as well, it hugely helps out the channel, and I will see you in the next one. Take care guys, much love.